Hi, everybody, and welcome to our third candidate interview. We have Doug Butler with us, and again, just a little bit of housekeeping. I want to start by wishing all my friends who celebrate a blessed and solemn Good Friday today. I know it's a very important day for us who do celebrate. And I also would like to thank WCAT, who has put this together. I work with quite a few different towns, and not many of them have a community access channel that would go out of their way to make sure this is on, especially on a Friday night. With that said, the goal of tonight is to has to have received as many questions from the public as possible, and we did get them via email, social media. People have texted us, and then ask it of the candidates. And my goal is to try my best to push the candidates on those positions to either be specific or to try to counter their argument if necessary. But most of the time we want to hear from them, and that's the main point. That's why we're here. So we're going to start with, I say it's the easiest question, but I think it might be the toughest, Doug. Do you want to just take a few seconds or a few minutes, however long you want, to introduce yourself and tell Wakefield about yourself?
Sure, and again, thanks again to WCAT for letting us do this. I'm Doug Butler. I've been a Wakefield resident for the relatively paltry time compared to my competitors of only 18 years. My wife's been here longer. She's been here, I think, a little north of 25. I've served on the town's finance committee for the past 13 years. I've served as vice chair for, I think, the past 4 on the finance committee. We're really committed to Wakefield, and we decided to come here, and we've decided to stay. My 3 kids go to school here. They're in the public school. Thankfully, all of them are going to be at the high school next year, so it's just one trip then. But I'm really excited about the town. Look, the town has some problems, but it is still a great place to live. And I think that I'm running because largely I think my skill set can help address some of the problems that we have going forward, not the problems that we have in the past, and not looking back to reliving a long gone day in both Massachusetts and in Wakefield.
No. Well, thank you. And let's get started with what I received. Well, let me ask you, and then we'll go from there, because I did ask it of Ali. John brought it up in his statement. But in your opinion, what is the #1 pressing issue in Wakefield that you want to work on?
I think that I want to work on is, again, development is the big thing.
Yeah, that's the question we got.
Development, but it's also understanding that there's not a yes or no. It's not either or, and it can't be we're never going to develop, because people want to develop, but people also want a vital downtown, and people want, like, the things we want for this town and to maintain it as a great place is to have some growth. Again, we're faced, fiscally, we've been in fantastic shape the past 10 years. We don't know that that's going to continue. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm running, because I have that sort of budgetary focus for the town, but also for thinking about how we grow both effectively and yet maintain that we're not looking to become, we're not Malden, we're not Somerville, we're not looking to become those towns, but we're also not going back to 1950.
Well, then let's talk about specifically development, because that was, to be fair, that is what we received the most comments, emails, texts about. Do you want to give us your overall thought? I know you alluded to it, but philosophy on housing development specifically, and then we'll talk about some of the main developments happening in Wakefield, Nan Street, the lake, the MBTA Overlay, and whatnot. But let's start with your overall philosophy on just housing development.
Sure, I think we need a lot of housing. We've gotten a lot, and so that's the other thing is I don't think we yet know exactly what we need for more housing development. We have 400 and something units coming on at the head of, like you just mentioned, the ones, but and it's probably another couple of hundred around town. So that's another 600 residents on top, or 600 units, which probably translates into ballpark 900 residents. On a base that is, the census says we're at like 27.1. We probably internally feel we're probably closer to 28,000 now. That's almost a 3% increase in the number of people in this town. which is not small, coming online in the next couple of years. So then to tack onto it this MBTA thing, not to like rush us through this discussion, but the MBTA thing of mandating, it isn't a mandate. That's the other thing. It's just saying that people can turn their lots, which have to be a certain size, into up to 4 units. Now, I used to own a place on Auburn Street. It was probably fell a little short of the required minimum, but you couldn't put 4 units on there unless you were putting them in as like, the pod hotels. It would be too small a space. And I think that's what everybody's concerned about. Everybody's concerned about it becoming too densely concentrated and frankly taking too long to drive anywhere.
No, so to bring it back, I will say the one we got the most comments on was Nan Street, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think of the actions right now of some of our councils? Would you say, I think, I don't want to say what the other answers were, but what are your thoughts on, do you favor the town's position or the ZBA's position? Are you opposed to it? What are your thoughts on the development in Nan Street?
I think that the town's position is, it's unfortunate. We've gotten to this point. I think at this point, you've got to sort of, would I have made those same decisions 2 years ago? Probably not. When you get to the point of approving things and getting the ball rolling, it's hard to stop it. So that's why you have to nip some of these things in the bud. But once they get going, it's very hard to roll the clock back. So, yeah, I'm not in love with the Nan Street project. I think it's probably too big. But I don't know how much you want to squeeze somebody down on those. Again, I'm less concerned about the projects that are being built now or that are coming than making sure that we make these decisions well going forward.
So in your opinion, some of the things we should be changing are things that are earlier in the process of development.
Yeah, I am not like one who's going to be great at political theater, and I also don't, I don't virtue signal a ton, and I'll be relatively straightforward. In this town, I had said that if I wanted to open up a chemical plant, I know the lawyer to hire to get it run through. And so that's one of the things that if you think about what our zoning board is and the way we've set it up. We've set up all of our policies to give people pretty free rein over their property. And that's fine, but then if you want that freedom, then that comes with the cost of people being able to develop it. Look, I'm not anti-development, but I've come around on this. I've come around to say, we are going to start reaching choke points. And, we probably have to do a better job of figuring out how to mitigate the growth. Again, we want to grow. We don't want to go backwards. We can't go backwards. We actually can't afford to go backwards. Even though we're in a great financial position, we can't afford to go backwards. So we need to keep moving forward with some growth. But you can't change you shouldn't try and change entire neighborhoods. And that's one of the things about Nan Street that is it's a little out of place for, or what's proposed is a little out of place for the neighborhood itself.
No, and then what about the development at the top of the lake? That was probably, if we got the most comments from Nan, not too far behind was the top of the lake.
Look, it's going to be a huge development, and it's now slated to be 400 and some odd units. I think one of the really sad things about that is the people who move in there. One of the things, we want to have a vital downtown. Those people are going to get on North Ave and they're going to make a right, and they're going to go to Starbucks in Reading, and they're going to go to Home Depot. They're not coming down to Hart's Hardware. They're not coming down to the Inspire Cafe, probably. You want to make it so that if we have a development of that size and we have an influx of new people, we want to make them, incorporate them effectively into Wakefield and get them to participate in the downtown life. And I don't know how we do that. I mean, to be fair, like, do we build some sort of shuttle system? Do we build something going around the lake? We might have a little trouble with that if there's a bike lane there, but that's besides the point.
We're going to get there.
I know.
And then the other one that we got was, and you've alluded to it, so I'm not trying to make you repeat yourself.
Sure.
But it's going to be a town meeting, the MBTA, the state law, with the overlay. We've had, actually, the last two candidates had different answers on what they're going to vote for at town meeting. What are your thoughts on the overlay? Do you think doing the minimum, or do you like the more expanded approach?
I probably would. I'm going to err on the side of doing the minimum. I think you're faced with this approach at the MBTA. You're faced with the question of the least worst option you have. Like, by the way, the other option is you don't. I mean, it's an on-town meeting now, so the other option is take the Milton approach and say no to anything, and then you're faced with, what does that look like? And can we afford that? And the answer is probably no. The state can make it incredibly painful not to say yes to the MBTA Communities Act. They've issued any number of threats, and it looks like they're carrying out some on Milton. It's a lot of money to leave on the table if you give up all of your state funding. So you really can't do that. So then the question is what do we do out there? And I think, it was that Councilman Dombrowski has a petition out there. I think my inclination would be, yes, to do as, I would not make this as, it's proposing a very broad approach. The whole MBTA Communities Act, mind you, it could have been even bigger. And I think it makes sense where the planning board decided to put it. I think we looked at it as well. We saw it at the finance committee. You couldn't really do it in Greenwood, and it would have been even more disruptive to Greenwood. Again, the other thing that I caution, my fellow constituents to worry about this MBTA Communities Act is we've got, I looked on the Patriot Properties database, it's a 5,000 square foot minimum lot size you've got to have. We have a ton of lots that don't meet that. So they really wouldn't be eligible unless they also got a variance, and that remains up for debate. But so that's an awful lot of the lots sort of on where you would see it on Armory Street, some of them on the Pleasant side, some of them over on the side towards the train station. But yeah, should we have more development? Should the area by our train station be more developed? Yes, but a lot of this was thought about pre-pandemic. Let's get ridership back on the commuter rail. Like right now, that is one of our huge problems for traffic is nobody's taking the train to work. Not that many people are going in every day to the city, but the MBTA has done a really bad job of making it a compelling option with both some of the service cuts that we've seen, but also making it appealing in terms of price-wise to not drive. So.
No, and then let's go to, if we can pivot a little bit, to downtown. That was probably the second amount of items that we heard back from, which is...
What about it?
Yeah, well, we got a lot on downtown. I do like to expand the question is, what do you think about what we're doing to attract businesses to Wakefield in general? And I don't just mean downtown Wakefield, but I'd like to think of, the North Ave corridor by the Dole Bear. Thank God everybody's okay over there. Greenwood.
Yep.
What will your philosophy as town councilor be to attract businesses to Wakefield? And then we'll get specific into the downtown.
Look, I was very pro us hiring an economic development director. I mean, again, like what can we do to attract people? I mean, I think they've started down that path. The meeting Monday night where they decided to spend $1 million on this new idea of like business incubation and building out a fund to help businesses grow there. I think, what we've done with converting the bread shop into the Inspire Cafe, providing some funding there. But it's always, you're always taking from somewhere. And the bigger question is we have a healthy number of landlords who have let their places lay fallow forever, or for an inordinate amount of time. I know we've tried to place pressure on them, but we haven't been particularly successful at that. And I'm not sure that you can be unless you change whole items in our charter. And that's a task. That's a tough task. But I also think we have to stop thinking that, that the corner grocery store can easily survive. That we'll have a deli alongside farmland, alongside. Those days are over. Like we're not, there's not gonna be a gap coming to downtown Wakefield because there might not be a gap much longer in Linfield in the mall. So you guys sort of have to look and see, what do people want? They want the things, why would they shop in downtown Wakefield? Why do they shop downtown anywhere? It's services, it's food, it's things you can't buy online, and it's experiences. So yeah, one of the things, we don't have great experience, nothing there, and that might be a great thing to have. Somebody was talking about, I think early on, the Santander building, which is now, what is it? The former Shawmut building, the former Santander building, not gonna be the next Rockland Trust building, is, in an incredible place and would be a great setup for something like, a brewery or a brew pub or something along those lines, or some sort of gathering space for people. It would require, healthy amount of renovation. We should make sure that we're working with people who, as we work with landlords, seeing how we can assist in bringing in that sort of place. You think about the Porch. That was a great little barbecue spot right by the train station.
They're doing very well.
And they're doing wonderful. I think they're in Medford.
Oh, Medford, you're right.
Yeah, I think they're in Medford. I've been, they have live music there. They have all that. It's a fantastic experience there. Yeah, we'd like some things like that because that's something also missing in the area. Those would be attractive. We have to figure out, what do we want downtown to look like? And do we want people walking in the streets? I mean, and I keep jumping ahead. I'm like, we're not going to become Holland where like everybody's biking down there. But we want a place that is appealing, but also it's got to, you have to be able to get in and out of there in less than a half hour.
Well, so to that point, one of the issues that came up was parking.
Yep.
Do you think there's an issue in downtown with parking, and what would you do to solve it?
I think there's
anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge issue with parking. That ship has sailed. It's like, I think one of the first people who came up to me, who I talked with, a friend of mine who I told was running, and he was like, "You're going to bring the logo back?" And I'm like, that ship has also sailed, my friend. Like those, the getting a parking garage in downtown, yeah, that probably has sailed. But, could we perhaps, it's a question of, what do we want? How much would it cost to build one on some either land we own or some land we took over? I mean, we did not, we didn't have the opportunity to buy the land when the First Baptist Church burned down. They elected to rebuild there, so that could have been a wonderful place to have some sort of development that would have included ample parking for much of downtown. There have to be areas where we could use some of our town resources to enable a better experience for people going downtown. We're not, the plans right now, that's not going to do it. Like angled, moving away from angled parking, we're doing all we can to get away from that, and I think it's a false narrative that we're going to, like, it's aspirational in a way that is not who we are.
No, and that does bring to biking. That has been one of the discussions.
Sure.
I mean, what are your thoughts on the bike path? And
I love the idea of a bike path. I particularly like, the thing that I love the most is I love the idea of the rail trail. The rail trail's a phenomenal idea. It would be lovely to get that thing done. The bike path around the lake, and I don't even mind the idea of protected biking around the lake. What I mind is what we saw at the, I don't know, two council meetings ago, where they presented, or they had presented earlier, and the council had voted that they wanted to keep parking on Main Street, which I'm glad for. I mean, I'm glad for it because I think it makes much more sense for the community as a whole and for people who enjoy the lake. We keep looking at the lake now and we keep driving by and seeing there's nobody parking there right now. Yeah, it's March, it's early April. There's not going to be much there. Come summertime, when we have events there on the Sundays, that parking area is packed on Main Street there. What I think is troubling is that I think people may have bought into the idea that you can have this notion of a free-flowing Main Street and parking and a protected bike lane. There's just not room. It's not, you look at any place else, you look at any of the places that have that similar setup in Medford, there's one right down, there's a couple in Somerville. Again, we're not trying to be those towns. It's a really tight squeeze for cars, so it'll be a very slow driving on Main Street if you keep the parking there, where you can keep the parking there. Or we'll have to build out, the bike lane will have to take over some of the pedestrian walkway, which will be widened, I imagine, in the coming plan. But it's a tough thing. I mean, you can have, my feeling is on it, you can have protected bike lane or you can have parking. You probably can't have both.
if you had to pick which one do you think you'd go with?
Which one would I go with? I think actually the protected bike lane is fine by me. And mind you, I live there, so the full disclosure to everyone, I would see this protected bike lane and I would carry some of the overflow of parking. I don't, that probably isn't going to make me super popular on my street, but I think having a protected bike lane around the lake is a really nice idea. But that's me. For the town, I think the better deal would be parking. For the town, I would say, if I was on the council, I'd vote for parking.
No, that's...
If I was on the council, I'd vote for parking. If I was thinking about Doug Butler and personal satisfaction, and that's where I think we maybe sometimes get confused, is we start thinking that the way we live or the way we want to live should be how the town lives. And that's something, as a representative, you have to acknowledge, you're there as a representative of the town. You're not there for your own personal either beliefs or benefits. And your personal beliefs have to come into it. Otherwise, frankly, you're spending a lot of time volunteering.
No, and we did have two issues with the downtown that came up that were somewhat specific to the downtown. One is individuals who are struggling with their mental health downtown.
Yep.
Obviously, I guess the question is, A, do you think this is an issue? And B, how do you solve it if it's possible to be solved on a townwide level?
Is it an issue? Yeah. I mean, I think when my daughter was 12, so my kids walk home from the Galvin. My daughter was 12, some guy said some scary stuff to her and made her feel crazy uncomfortable, and it was bad, call the police bad sort of thing. When we wander through downtown, when you stop at the Dollar Tree and you have to wend your way through either a couple of people who are clearly not mentally well or clearly intoxicated of some sort. Yeah, that's a problem. And if you want to get people to like be comfortable downtown, like, you want to eat outside a public kitchen, you don't want to have like, 3 people like laid out across the way from you. Like, that's not anybody's idea of like a pleasant experience. Now, you can't, this isn't 1991 with Rudy Giuliani. You can't like, send the police out to herd them up. But what you can do is you can make sure that they know there's every available service to them. You have to do reach out. We've done a lot of it. The health department's has done a good job reaching out to people and trying to like make sure they're aware of services, but then you do like, I think for solving the problem, yeah, it does have to be somewhat carrot and stick. And yes, you might eventually have to, like, if people are sleeping in business owners' doorways, you might have to like, it's not arresting them, but it's getting them into a homeless place, getting them into some place that is not obstructing somebody's capacity to have a business. I mean, our small business owners, we do have to care about them, and they've been a dwindling breed, and I understand there's a huge mental health crisis in the state, and there are huge addiction issues throughout. Every town is dealing with this. But you need to make sure that you keep your residents feeling safe.
And then the other issue that came up was cleaning up. There was somebody who had mentioned the amount of nips, specifically the amount of trash. They also kind of alluded to snow removal. I guess very similar. Do you think that this is an issue? And if so, do you think the town could be doing more to solve it?
I think it's a huge issue. And to be fair, like, yeah, I mean, and you're like, really, everybody buys Fireball? I don't understand it. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. I don't really love cinnamon. But the bigger issue is, and you can't blame, it's not blaming anybody, but we do have a fairly like, derelict looking liquor store right in the heart of downtown. And that just got renewed. They just switched owners, and so to switch owners, the town council had to vote to approve that transfer, and they voted 7-0 for it. And I guess in general, that's viewed as like, you don't necessarily want to impede with somebody's business. I'm like, maybe that's a place where we impede with your business. Maybe that's not where, we as a town got like crazy about having like, about marijuana 10 years ago. And like, we're one of the first to like, ban everything. But we're cool with, a liquor store that's sort of run down in the heart of our downtown. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Melrose, and I'm pretty sure like, Winchester, and I'm pretty sure other Reading wouldn't stand for that.
And do you think there's anything the town council could do? I mean, I guess you did say you could.
Well, they could have. I don't know that you can't. You can do it every year. Like, so they'll get a chance next year, and maybe you just have the hard, honest talk with them. Like, you got to, this has to be better, or else. But by the way, their point might be, look, this is not profitable at all unless I can't put any money into the store. It's already not making money because we don't have enough people here. We don't have enough people, who are shopping in this area. And that's probably what you're going to face from most business owners is like, oh, I'd love to like handle this a different way. I mean, we have our sign bylaw and we have those things, but it's really, we have to figure out a way to get more businesses open downtown, which means you have to get that, you have to get more traffic downtown. To get more traffic downtown, you probably need more people living down there. So that gets us back to the MBTA and back to I love the idea of, before we think about the MBTA piece, let's think about how we're going to economically benefit from the 407 apartments or whatever it is that are coming in at the head of the lake. How are we as a town going to benefit from that? Because right now, we're going to absorb a bunch of that cost with schools, with police, with fire. But the benefit of that is really, some of it is, yes, we're getting that will be developed and will be a healthy contributor to tax rolls. It'll be healthy new growth. But that the economic power of those people living there, it's going to Reading, it's going to Linfield. It's not coming to Wakefield unless we do something differently.
Drew, and to that point, you mentioned it. Let's talk about marijuana.
Okay.
It's coming up at town meeting.
Yeah.
Overlay on Audubon Road. What are your thoughts?
I don't mind the idea of us having, that's a great, if you look on the map of all the dispensaries and you go on to the cannabis, Massachusetts website, they'll show you where all the dispensaries are. It's actually a great location for one because there's almost none that are right on 128 there. So it's a good retail location for one. I'm not in love with, I love how it's been built. I don't know that, I'm not sure that this district isn't sort of done for a developer who just bought in September of 23, which, I guess that's how these things get done and get put in place. But, we sort of know where it's likely to go in. I think the revenue that it could bring is substantial. You get to tax, so people know, you can tax locally up to 3% of the sales in a dispensary. But one thing that everybody wrote about during the early years of of the legalization of marijuana was, back then it was $450 an ounce. So if you got 3% on that, it was a great thing. That's down to, I don't know where it is. I looked on the website today. It's $140 or $150 an ounce. So it's come down by a factor of about 70%. So your tax benefit has also dropped dramatically. So the tax benefit, do I think that us building a dispensary on Audubon Road is going to increase the health costs of marijuana in our town? No. I mean, if people want it, they can get it now. I mean, it's legal, it's everywhere, it's fine. So I'm for it. I'm not sure, it feels like it's a little narrowly concentrated for, and maybe for specific beneficial ownership, but it may be, but it seems like it's positioned at the right place. It's the right section of our town. It's, everybody puts their stuff on the edges of their town.
Yep. On that note, we are going to pivot to a few other topics that did not get nearly as much, they're all important, but not get nearly as much questions sent in or comments made about. And I know we only have about, say, 20, 25 minutes, so I might move a little bit quicker. But we got some emails or comments about the conditions of the road in Wakefield. What do you think the conditions are, and how should we improve it? Or not improve it if you think it's fine.
No, the conditions are rough. It's rough sledding. I mean, there are certain roads, and I have a rear-wheel drive car that is not like a lifted SUV. So there's certainly sections of town that I don't drive through if I can avoid it because of the potholes, because of the amount of teeth jarring. I can have only so many fillings replaced every year. It's a problem. But you ask for a solution, we can spend money on roads, and we've spent so much more money in the last 10 years on roads than we had before. But this is all a consequence of not doing enough spending from probably the mid to late 90s through the 2009, 2010. We started really ramping up spending. My guess is around 2015 or so, we really started putting money. We on the finance committee even added money to the budget one year for street repair. One of the, and I think one of the common thoughts is like, well, the snow and it's the springtime. We always have a rough time in spring because of the potholes. Look, there wasn't much snow. The snow was not like a factor this past year. The roads have been bad for a long time. They're going to stay bad for a healthy amount of time. Now, some of the roads are going to get fixed when they do the final pass for all the electrical, like all the giant electrical substation that was put in. That's National Grid. That's going to bring the town $2 million a year in additional revenue. So it's going to be a good thing. That should be done, and like those roads should be better off. But yeah, I mean, it's tough, but it's not like you drive across the town line and all of a sudden you're driving on roads paved with glass. Everybody's got trouble with their roads, and it's a hard thing to do. It's New England, so it's going to be tough no matter. But it's also tough because we haven't been in a fiscal crisis for a while where you have to stop spending on certain things. By the way, one of the things that's easy to stop spending on is fixing the road, or keeping it up. Maintaining is the biggest problem that you have when you're facing tough economic times, and it's one of the reasons why I'm running, is making those decisions.
No, and then to continue on that trend, and I'm going to just try to go in order of where we got the most questions. We did get a question about ARPA funds.
Sure.
What do you think, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, how do you think the town policy-wise did in spending those ARPA funds? And then what do you think about the decisions the town council made?
Yeah, and it was interesting because, I know there's been a lot of talk about how fractured town council has been, and how there's a certain subsegment of our population that talks about to a degree the divisiveness. Look, town council, this most recent one notwithstanding, they've pretty much ended up being aligned on everything. I think last year there were 2 votes where the councilors had a difference of opinion. There were only 2 subjects where there was not a 7-0 mandate. And then some of the ARPA funds ended up, I don't know if it ended up being 7-0, I didn't see the final vote on it, but there was, I think it was a good, healthy discussion, and I think Councillor Carney brought up some good points, and probably, I think I would have gone along with one of his amendments, but not not both. I'm trying to remember. There were so many amendments.
And you didn't mean Councillor McLean,
Oh, Councillor McLean,
yeah,
yes.
sorry.
Did I say McCarthy?
You said Carney, so I just want to make it
clear. Yeah. No, I'm not giving John the job just yet. But yeah, it was, I think the spending of the $1 million on the incubator, it's a good idea. The $200,000 on the housing authority was fine. I'm trying to recall where all the money was spent.
No, and they did go through it, and kind of touched on one of the issues. So I'll break my rule and jump around a little bit. Working with colleagues came up.
Yeah.
What will you be doing, or what do you think your team management style will be to try to work with colleagues? Have you reached out to them? What's your plan to try to be, I guess, on the council and work with them to bring about any changes?
Well, I know most of them. I think of the current members, I think 6 of the 7 we've had lawn signs on my house for. So I've been, I know them enough to say yes to that. I think in terms of working together, I've worked with 3 of the current town council, although Anna's leaving, were on the finance committee in the past. But again, I think one of the things, it's probably like the Supreme Court, where you work together, but there are times when you have a difference of opinion, and you have to be clear and sort of equivocal about oh, this is where my line is. These are the things that I find sort of unacceptable. But you also have to understand that you're one voice of seven, and that you're this we're not in a different we're not in a dictatorship. So you have to be able to get along. So one of the things that I've worked on teams my entire life, and I work on a team right now that we run it where everybody gets a vote, and then once we make that decision, then it's a dictatorship. Then that's the decision we're going with. So I think you have to listen to hear people out, and then once we as a body make the decision, that's the decision. And it can be brought up again in some other shape or form, but for the most part, you have to move on, because again, the town's facing a number of things, and I don't. I'll save it, but I don't think the questions you probably got even touched on what probably the most important thing the council's going to face.
Ooh, which is in the next 3 to 5 years, the council will have to hire a new town administrator, and that is the reason that I'm running. So let's jump to that then, because this was one of the open questions I saved to the end, but I'll do it now, and we'll talk about the town administrator. What do you think about the job Steve Mayo is doing? And then the corollary to that, one of the questions I had as an open question is, what issue do you think we'll deal with soon that we're not talking about, which you somewhat just answered?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think Steve has been a fantastic administrator for his time here. Like, we have to be pleased with. I mean, should be beyond belief. He's been very good. We're always worked pretty successfully with Steve on the finance committee, and I personally. And by the way, Steve and I certainly don't agree on everything, and we certainly come. He will tell you, he's like Mr. Butler again, but overall, the work he has done over his full body of work here at Wakefield has been phenomenal. Like, the biggest issue facing the town is we've had now 2 administrators for it's been a long time since we had to replace one administrator, and the previous administrator had been in office for quite some time. So I think there is a lot of work to be done there. And do I agree with everything Steve has done? Certainly, probably less so over the past 4 or 5 years, but still think that he's given a phenomenal effort here, and he's an incredible worker, and he loves this town, and he's done a lot to help us get to where we are now, which is we are more financially sound than we ever were. We are a town that is more desirable to live in than it ever was, not, taking nothing away from the people who grew up here who want to talk about what a glorious place this was. This is, by the objective measures, as good a place as it's ever been to live. And we shouldn't take that for granted. It doesn't always have to stay like that. So that's my pitch around, what we want to make sure we're doing.
No, and then I guess to follow up to one of the other questions, so you think, is it fair to say that you think the issue that we're going to be dealing with that nobody's talking about yet is who the next town administrator will be, and that's what motivated you to run?
That was among the biggest things, is I think, because when you decide to run for these things, you have to think of well, what am I bringing to the table that the other folks aren't? Allie and John are both longtime residents, have served in any number of things. I think they're both very smart, very diligent, very hardworking. I have a few skill sets that by the way, I've been on the finance committee for 13 years. I didn't run for a reason. I was always, I like being appointed, not elected. But what I think the town will need going forward is someone or a group of someones who have who have done the work of hiring people into positions where you were like, you're living with them for at least 3 years, and hopefully you're living with them for 10. And that's a lot of what my job entails.
No, sounds good. So just because we're closely, and I'm going to cut a few of the questions out that the other, I just want to let it be fair, that the other candidates have. I just can't give you more time than the other ones. But I will ask you 2 more questions, and then we'll get to some fun stuff. 2 issues that got probably more comments than the others, and I'm hoping my memory's serving me right. One was voting locations, came up. I got that a few times. What do you think about how people vote? Do you think the central location, or do you want to go back to what they had called neighborhood locations, or something in between?
Yeah.
I don't even know what the in between would be, actually, to be fair.
I mean, I think like the idea of neighborhood locations is nice. It was more expensive. It was a healthy amount more expensive. There's a decent amount of cost savings that comes with going to single site voting. The other issue is it's not like single site voting has really reduced the number of people voting. The same, look, if I got, if any of us got, 5% of the vote, 5% of the population, we'd be getting a huge number for a town vote. It's, it's a bigger question, and I know that most recently, you shouldn't have professional development day for the teachers at the one place that people are allowed to vote, or that people are voting on the same day. Like that just, that's silly. Like you should have worked that out with the schools. And had either professional development for middle school gone somewhere else or whatnot. You shouldn't have had, there was a big issue with parking there. I don't know that's always the issue. So, it would be more convenient for us to all have our individual little voting areas. I don't know that making it mildly more inconvenient but saving a bunch of money ends up probably being worth it, because you probably get the same number of voters for most voting. And it's been fast. Like, I've never had a long wait at either when I was voting at a local school or when I was voting at the Galvin.
Well, then we'll go to one other question because we're about 50 minutes in. I would say the other one that got a few comments in, but again, not as many as the other ones. But it was the flags. The issue with flags. So what are your thoughts on the flag policy, as it currently stands, and, would you make any changes to it?
Look, I mean, the one thing I'd say is, we've spent I think people are spending a lot of time talking about flags. And, I think the flag is important. It's a vital symbol of the country. It's a vital symbol of the state. I understand why people want to have tremendous respect for the American flag and the POW flag. And then the concern is over what we allow to fly in front of the AmeriCal. Look, I believe the Pride flag has been flying for 7 or 8 years now in front of the AmeriCal, and it just became a hot topic this past year. I generally would side with keeping our flag policy as it is. I'm not looking to change up what we do. I believe it's, and again, I'm not as well versed in the flag policy, because, by the way, where we're talking about it probably ranks in the order of my priorities as a town councilor. As a town councilor, I don't think that the flag should be a top of the list, things I want to accomplish in the next 3 years that are going to help the people. It's not the flag.
Well, then we'll go to one of the open questions, which,
Sure.
We did 2 of them. You answered one of them, which is, what issue do you think will be deal with that we're not talking about?
Okay.
The other one is, can you give me an example of when you changed your mind?
Well, I did before when I said I've never wanted to run for for office. But no, I'll say this. Look, I think some people may remember my wife ran 6 years ago for and I think it was the first time it was called the town council. And she really got me to change my mind around almost that all development, and especially building out the number of units in the town I was always, well, it's economically beneficial. It's gonna add value. She's like, you don't see the other costs of it, and she got me to change my mind around that.
I can tell you, very smart move to be like, my wife was right about something on TV in front of the town.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a good one. All right, so we'll wrap up with some fun questions. I said, what's your favorite book?
Probably nonfiction would be sort of Outliers, and then favorite fiction book is always tough because you read. Generally, I listen now because I'm in the car. There's a great one that came out, Remarkably Bright Creatures, which was about an octopus. Trust me, it's better than you think. It's sort of like the Netflix documentary on the octopus.
Favorite movie?
Probably, that's always so tough. I'd go, one that I never turn off is The Usual Suspects. So whenever I'm flipping around and I see The Usual Suspects on, I watch it.
Favorite musician or band?
Favorite musician's probably Lyle Lovett.
Oh.
Yeah, a little country rock guy, but go ahead.
Favorite song?
Another tough one. I'll say this. My go-to karaoke song is I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys.
And then we've been asking everybody to perform their fate now.
Yeah, awesome.
Favorite show?
Favorite show? I don't think I have just one. I'm not like, I've been watching Reacher, and I like that a lot. So
and then last thing, I'll give you an opportunity to make a pitch to the voters of Wakefield on why they should vote for you.
Sure. I'm Doug Butler. I've been serving for the town for the past 13 years on the finance committee side of things, and I'm making my pitch to y'all that I want to help grow this town over the next 3 to 5 years. I want to help figure out how we move forward as a town, both with development, but also with building out and revitalizing our downtown. And really, to do that, we need to have the leadership that we see building for the next 10 years. And to do that, I think I'm the right person to help build that out.
No. Well, Doug, thank you. I do want to say, to all the candidates who did this, what camera am I on to? All the candidates who joined us, thank you. It is a thankless job, but you make a great impact, and it's probably the one that impacts most people's lives. Doug, thank you for your time. John, Allie, if you guys are watching, thank you. WCAT, thank you. And if you celebrate, I hope, I know today's a solemn day, but I hope you have a wonderful Easter. All right, Doug, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
And Ian, who's behind, thank you.